Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over my week number 17 top 30 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Today's video is being brought to you guys by DraftKings Sportsbook, who we're going to be talking about a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 17 top 30 ranked wide receivers and tiers. We begin with tier number 1 at the wide receiver position. All 5 of these guys, in my opinion, are must-starts on the week, headlined by Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay this week. Currently in half PPR, Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver number 1 on the season, having 3 straight games as a top 3 wide receiver. This week, going up against the Green Bay Packers defense, I fully expect Justin Jefferson to go to Pound Town yet again. I really do think this is going to be one of the highest scoring games in week number 17. I think Justin Jefferson takes full advantage of that. Speaking of high scoring games, at number 2, we have Ja'Marr Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football in Cincinnati. Now, Ja'Marr Chase is only the wide receiver number 11 on the season in half PPR, but that's because he missed 4 games in the middle of the season. Last week, he was the wide receiver number 33, but he still had 11 targets, 8 receptions, and 79 yards. I truly believe this will be a big bounce back game for Ja'Marr Chase, as I expect this to be the highest scoring game on the slate, and I expect Ja'Marr Chase to be able to put up humongous numbers in this spot. At number 3, we move to Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the New England Patriots in Foxborough. Now, even though Teddy Two Gloves will be under center in this game, Tyreek Hill is going to be just fine, and even when Tua has missed spots throughout the season, Tyreek Hill still has the upside to be the number 1 wide receiver on the week, especially since the Patriots defense is banged up. Currently the wide receiver number 2 on the season, even though the matchup isn't necessarily some wet dream like the other 2 matchups, and even though Tyreek has Teddy Two Gloves under center, I still trust him immensely. At number 4, we got Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills going up against the Bengals in Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. Now, it is reported that Stefon Diggs is dealing with an illness, but I do believe he will end up playing on Monday because he does get that extra day all the way up until Monday. Again, I love this matchup. I know that Diggs is in a bit of a slump, wide receiver 65, 42, and 57 over the last 3 games, but I think he escapes that easily in this spot. Again, this game reeks of points. I really expect a humongous game from all of the main options in this Bills versus Bengals game. At number 5, we move to Amon-Ra St. Brown to close out tier number 1 of the Detroit Lions going up against the Chicago Bears. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown's also been a bit of a slump, wide receiver 28, 27, and 32, but going up against the Chicago Bears is the definition of a wet dream matchup. They are a bottom of the barrel pass defense in the NFL. Jared Goff has looked incredible as of recently. Now, I know baby Chark DJ Chark, as well as Jameson Williams, Cleve Raymond, they have a lot of options to throw the ball to. Ultimately, though, Amon-Ra St. Brown is still the number 1 wide receiver, and his upside is immense weekly. Now we move to tier number 2. This tier is only filled with 3 players, beginning with Keenan Allen of the LA Chargers going up against the LA Rams this week at home in LA. For the Chargers, technically it's a home game, but it's a double home game, except for the fact that neither of these teams have fucking fans. Wide receiver 13, 20, 15, and 30 over the last 4 games. I understand that the Rams defense hasn't looked like a bag of dicks as of recently, but ultimately, with how consistent Keenan Allen has been, and with potentially how good this Rams offense might get, we might be able to see a high-scoring game, which would heavily benefit Keenan Allen. At number 7, we move to A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the New Orleans Saints at home in Philadelphia. It's pretty up in the air right now if Jalen Hurts is going to end up playing. Now, if I'm the Eagles, I'm just going to rest Jalen Hurts. We could easily win this game in their perspective, saying we, like I am a part of the Eagles. then yeah, you just play Gardner Minshew, you beat the Saints. The Saints are dog shit. It's easy, but maybe Jalen Hurts does end up playing. A.J. Brown was limited in practice on Wednesday. I honestly think he should be good to go here up against the Saints. Wide receiver 18, 4, 16, and 3 over his last 4 games. Currently the wide receiver number 5. Now, we have seen some down games out of him, but that's just what happens when you're on a team that is loaded with talent like the Eagles. They have Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Quez Watkins, Dallas Goedert. They have Jalen Hurts who could sneak in a touchdown. Obviously, we don't know know if he's going to end up playing or not, but that doesn't really mold my opinion on A.J. Brown too much. I expect this to be a big game regardless of the quarterback. At number 8, we got my guy Titty Boy T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Buffalo Bills. No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Wide receiver 5 and 18 over his last 2 games. Wide receiver number 9 on the season. Again, this game reeks of points. I expect this to be the most high-scoring game on the slate. I think this game's going to be incredibly fun. T. Higgins, while he's the number 2 on the team, it's more of a 1A, 1B. Jamar Chase, 1A, T. Higgins, 1B. I think Joe Burrow is going to have a huge spot here. Again, this game is going to be very high-scoring. All of these wide receiver weapons, the main guys, are must starts. Now we move to tier number 3 at the wide receiver position, beginning at number 9 with Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Carolina Panthers this week at home in Tampa Bay. Wide receiver number 30 last week, but over his last 5 games, he's had 10, 8, 9, 13, and 13 targets. The amount of targets going his way leads to consistency, and even though he's had a couple of down games over the last 3, I think he gets back on the saddle here and has a big game up against the Panthers that is banged up defensively. At number 10, we have Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets going up against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Now, I know over the last 2 games with Zach Wilson under center, Garrett Wilson owners have been a little bit sad, and I get that, right? Wide receiver 73 and 26 because Zach Wilson fucking sucks donkey hog at being a quarterback, but now Magic Mike White has been resurrected, and he is coming back to make Garrett Wilson absolutely fucking smash the shit out of the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks defense is a little bit underrated. I'll give it to him. I've said it all fucking year. But ultimately, when you have Magic Mike White under center, who loves to force feed the ball down the throat of Garrett Wilson, I expect this to be a huge spot out of Garrett Wilson. All of the wide receivers in tier 1 and 2, I love. In tier number 3, there are a little bit of worries when it comes to the wide receivers, right? Brady hasn't been playing the best for Godwin. Garrett Wilson still has to worry about the fact that maybe Mike White isn't fully healthy, and maybe he doesn't get overly peppered. I think he will, but again, Seattle's defense a little bit sneaky good. At number 11, we have DK Metcalf, another wide receiver in this game. Now, it does appear that Tyler Lockett has the chance to play in this game, but ultimately, based upon the injury he sustained, I'm not too sure he'll be good to go. Now, going up against the Jets defense, this is no pushover, this is no wet dream matchup, but the Seattle Seahawks need to win this fucking game to make the playoffs. So do the Jets. So it's not like they're going to be fucking around like, oh, Sauce Gardner's on DK Metcalf. They are going to fucking pepper DK Metcalf with the ball. I don't give a fuck if other teams were pussyfooting around Sauce Gardner. They are going to force feed the rock to DK Metcalf. Maybe it's not his best game ever, but he's going to get the volume, and he's an excellent player. At number 12, we got Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the San Francisco 49ers at home in Viva Las Vegas. Now, 3 straight shit games out of Davante Adams, wide receiver 79, 58, and 38. He is going to be dealing with going up against a tough defense, and they also benched Derek Carr for Jarrett Stidham. But ultimately, game on the line, back against the wall. Are you going to sit Davante Adams in your fantasy football championship? No, because if Jarrett Stidham has half of a fucking brain cell, he is going to realize that he needs to force feed the ball to Davante Adams so that he can have a decent game. He's going to throw the rock to Davante Adams. He's going to feed him. This is a bad matchup, I know. But I'm not fucking sitting Davante Adams even if I was the quarterback or Stevie Wonder was the quarterback. I'm still playing Davante Adams. At number 13, we have my guy, Jalen Waddle away, waddle, till the very next day. Bum, 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 bum. Wide receiver 4 and 7 over the last 2 games. It's been great. It's been great for my guy, Jalen Waddle. Problem is, when the other backup quarterbacks took over, Jalen Waddle taking a fucking nap because they weren't targeting Jalen Waddle as much as Tua Tagovailoa was. Now, ultimately, does that mean that I'm going to swim away, be super nervous about Jalen Waddle? No, but I can't rank him higher, even though I love him in this spot, because of the quarterback change. The quarterback change has roughly 0 effect on Tyreek Hill, has a much stronger effect on Jalen Waddle. Now we pivot to tier number 4, where my worries start to get a little bit more. These are all still decent plays, I'm a little worried about these guys. Beginning at number 14 with Devontae Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, A.J. Brown is the number one guy, the head honcho in town. Whether it's Gardner Minshew or Jalen Hurts under center, I still really like Devontae Adams, but obviously the fact that the room is so crowded is why we've seen games where Devontae Smith kind of goes forgotten. Wide receiver 119, 75, 53, 59 multiple times this season. Now, over the last 4 games, he's been on fucking fire. NBA Jam style, wide receiver 2, 15, 17, 11. Currently wide receiver number 10 on the season. So I'm not telling you to sit Devontae Smith. I just have some worries about him, but I still like him a ton. At number 15, we have Mike Williams of the LA Chargers going up against the LA Rams. But before we break down Mike Williams and the West, the West? That guy have a fucking wisp like Mike Tyson. But yeah, before we go with Mike Williams and the rest of these wide receivers, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, if you're a brand new user over at DraftKings Sportsbook, you can click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment. They have a great offer for you. If you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line on DraftKings Sportsbook, you'll receive $150 in free bets as long as your bet wins. Now, notice how I said if your bet wins. So you're going to look on the screen right now, and you're going to navigate to college basketball. College basketball has the largest favorites out of any sport, and you are going to pick whichever the highest favorite is. Whatever the biggest favorite is, you're going to pick them, bet $5 on them, and you'll win $150 in free bets if the team wins. It's that simple. So you're going to take the biggest favorite, $5 on them, and you receive $150 if they win. It really is that simple in free bets. So make sure you take advantage of that right now before this offer disappears. Back on into things with Mike Williams, wide receiver 35, 40, and 4 after returning from injury over the last 3 games. We know the Mike Williams cycle. This guy has immense upside to be the number 1 receiver in fantasy football, but he also might end up being a dud. He's the definition of boom or bust. I like the matchup against the Rams, so I'm going to play him. Again, I understand he might fuck me over. He might take a dump directly on my chest, but he might also be the reason why I win, and especially in a positive matchup, I like Mike Williams a ton. At number 16, we have Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Houston Texans in Houston. It's been a bit of a roller coaster over the last 5 games. Wide receiver 61, 21, 48, 19, and 64. Currently the wide receiver 14 on the season, and if you notice that pattern, he has a down game, a good game, down game, good game, down game. Well, his last game was a down game, so by process of using my brain here, quick mathematics, he should have a good game this week. The matchup here is obviously great going up against a garbage Houston Texans defense. I like Christian Kirk a ton here, even though he's been a little inconsistent. At the end of the day, the upside is there, and the matchup is amazing. At number 17, we have DeAndre Hopkins of the Arizona Cardinals going up against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. The fact that Colt McCoy is under center really just scares me for DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's a little crazy to bench him this week in a lot of scenarios because, again, the matchup is amazing. The Falcons' defense is complete and utter fucking dog shit, but I also feel like the fact that Colt McCoy is under center gives me zero confidence. I have zero confidence in DeAndre Hopkins smashing this week. Now, could he? Of course. He's literally one of the best receivers in the NFL, but the situation is disgusting. At number 18, we have Terry McLaurin. Speaking of bad situations, Riverboat Ron has bent us over a table and fucked us directly in the ass because he decides to put Carson Wentz back in the game. Now, I know Carson Wentz might be just the tip better than Taylor Heineke, but Heineke is significantly better for Terry McLaurin. I don't care how you look at things. That is 100% the fucking truth. 100% the truth. And the fact that Wentz is back under center, could McLaurin still have a decent game? Yes. But does he have that same upside to be the number 1 receiver in fantasy? To me, no. At number 19, we have Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos going up against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Wide receiver 15, 29, and 1 over the last 3 games. I know Mr. Unlimited's bad. He might not just be bad, he's awful, atrocious, bottom of the barrel. But at the end of the day, he is still force-feeding the rock to Jerry Jeudy. 10, 8, and 9 targets over the last 3 games. Jerry Jeudy is an incredible talent. The matchup up against the Chiefs is the last game where he was amazing. Wide receiver number 1 in week number 14. So he has it in him. The matchup's solid. The Chiefs defense is not any world beaters here. So I like Jeudy a decent amount. At number 20, we have Wiki DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers going up against the Bucs in Tampa Bay. Wide receiver 9 and 13 over the last 2 games. Now, that was up against Detroit. That's defense is pretty bad. Up against the Steelers, whose defense is pretty mid. This week, he gets another mid defense in the Buccaneers. I love DJ Moore. I wish I could rank him higher, But we've fallen into this cycle before, where he's wide receiver 8 and 5, week 7, week 8. And then after that, wide receiver 50, 64, 62. So I don't want to get trapped into this because this offense was really humming last week and maybe everything falls off. But he was the wide receiver number 8 in week 7 up against the Bucs. So he certainly has it in him. I'm rooting for him. I got him ranked at 20. I wanted to rank him a little bit higher. But again, I just kind of have that fear that everything's going to go back out of whack. And that does concern me a little bit. Now we move to tier number 5, beginning at number 21. Can you do something for me? Mr. Corvette, Juju Smith-Schuster of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Denver Broncos, wide receiver 59, 25, and 6. Over the last 3 games, he did not get heavily targeted at all up against the Seahawks, but the 2 games prior to that, not wide receiver, 10 targets and 11 targets. Against Denver, he ate wide receiver 6. Now, obviously on paper, this is a really bad matchup. Broncos have one of the best defenses in the NFL, despite the fact that their offense moves at the pace that snails have intercourse. Ultimately, though, I still have some trust in Juju, and I probably have more trust than other people, because I really do believe the guy's talented, and it's pretty clear that he's the number 1 receiver on the team, not named Travis Kelce. So I like Juju a ton. Maybe this is going to burn me. Maybe he sinks the fucking metaphorical ship of your fantasy team. But I like him a bunch. At number 22, we have Zay Jones. Last week, complete and utter dud, wide receiver 88. But over the last 4 games before that, wide receiver 1, 8, 77, and 5. He has the big upside in him. This is an incredible matchup again. The Texans defense sucks donkey cock. So I love Zay Jones in this spot. I still believe in him. His expert consensus ranking on Fantasy Pros, wide receiver 27, which is way too fucking low. I know, hit or miss with Zay Jones. But we also saw wide receiver 30, 35, 58, 33, 43. So he still has that middle in him, just hasn't seen it recently. At number 23, we have Brandon Ayuk of the Niners going up against the Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Wide receiver 29, 74, and 23 over the last 3 games. His targets haven't been high, 7, 4, and 3. The Raiders defense is god-awful, terrible, bottom of the barrel, one of the worst defenses, maybe even the worst defense in the NFL. Ayuk has been getting some decent usage with Big Cock Brock. But the problem here is Debo might be back, which throws a wrench into things. So until we have more clarification on Debo, I can't rank him much higher than this. I like Ayuk. I like the player, but we just haven't seen many great games out of him. Wide receiver 10, 10, and 3 times this season, top 10 receiver. So he's good and all. The matchup's great. It's just with how good George Kittle has looked and how good McCaffrey has looked, can I really throw full trust into Ayuk, like rank him a tier higher? I just really can't. These are all players that I really like, but there is some risk with them. At number 24, we have Christian Watson of the Packers going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Green Bay. Now, his status right now up in the air. He was sidelined with a hip injury on Thursday. We'll see what happens on Friday. Certainly up in the air. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. If he plays, I know wide receiver 41 and 50, the wheels kind of fell off of the hype train of Christian Watson, but he's still been targeted 8 and 6 targets over the last 2 games. He's still the guy on the team. They're playing up against the Vikings, whose defense is terrible. I really think this has all the makings of being really fun. Being a game that you lay down, you watch. You're like, wow. You throw your hand in your pants. You're like, wow, this is a fun one. Really could be. If Watson doesn't play, that bumps up Lazard and Dobbs. But right now, we don't know. But if he does play, I think you got to play Watson. Again, I understand 2 down games in a row. I still think he's got that dog in him. I still think he's a great player. Now we move to tier number 6, the final tier at wide receiver. And this kind of the tier where it's like, fuck, I have to play this player. Things could be worse. Could be a lot worse. But, do you really want these guys in your lineup? This is kind of the range. Like, tiers 1 through 5, it's like, oh, I get to start these guys. This is where things really start to fall off, in my opinion. Deontay Johnson, I kind of was struggling to think of where to put him, because I like Deontay Johnson a ton. He's been pretty consistent recently, but I still know that Kenny Pickett's his quarterback, who isn't the best. Kenny Two Gloves, small hands Kenny. And they're also playing the Ravens, whose defense has been much improved. So I don't love it, but he has been so consistent recently that he did earn his way to the top of this tier. Wide receiver 38, 16, 28 over the last 3 games. Wide receiver 35 in the season. I was a big Deontay Johnson guy in the offseason, banging the drum aggressively. The targets have been there for him. The guy just hasn't scored a touchdown. Not 1 touchdown all season. Last year, the man scored 6 touchdowns. Or no, he scored 8 touchdowns last year, 7 the season prior, and 6 in 2019. But this year, he has 0. And I just don't know if he'll ever score a fucking touchdown this season. He's got 2 more tries. Not like they're going to make the playoffs. Hopefully this is the game. But am I going to bet on that when he hasn't done it all season? No. And if he was scoring touchdowns this season, probably would have been a lot better. Definitely would have finished a lot better at wide receiver. Number 26, we got Mike Evans. Another guy who just hasn't scored. Hasn't scored since week 4. He's got 3 touchdowns on the season. Not only is a guy with double-digit touchdowns, if you look at his career, this year he's got 3. 2021, 14, 2020, 13, 8, 9, 5, 12, 3, and 12 touchdowns. This is a guy that dominates the red zone. He dominates in the paint. He goes hard in the motherfucking paint. This year? No. Hasn't done shit. It's been pretty bad recently. Wide receiver 57, 32, 49, 45, 75. He's still Mike Evans. That's what's got him up here. He's still really fucking good. Where are the targets? They're there. 8, 9, and 9 over the last 3 games. They're there. There's just no touchdowns, and there's not a lot of yards either. It just sucks to see for both these guys, the immense talents just can't score. Speaking of can't scoring, wide receiver 28 is Jakobi Meyers, but in the middle of that, we got wide receiver 27, Amari Cooper. Guy's been pretty bad recently ever since Watson took over. Wide receiver 55, 59, 44, and 31 since Watson came over. Still wide receiver 13 on the season. He's got a lot of upside. Just hasn't done shit with Watson. Hard to trust him when he hasn't done anything with his starting quarterback. Matchup against the Commanders is decent. Just can't trust him. Wide receiver 28, Jakobi Meyers. Dolphins defense looks like shit when they play away. This game is in Foxborough, so Jakobi Meyers has that upside. Wide receiver 11 last week. Week 15 against the Raiders, he threw the game away. Literally threw the ball to Chandler Jones, who picked that shit up, stiff-armed that bitch motherfucker Mac Jones, moseyed on into the end zone and scored. But at the end of the day, I still like Jakobi Meyers a ton, but he's been very inconsistent, and he has 4 touchdowns on the year. How many did he score last year? He scored 2 last year, so he scored double the amount that he scored last year. He has the same amount of touchdowns as he has in his whole career this year compared to the 3 seasons prior, so that's great for Jakobi Meyers. I like him. I'm rooting for him. I hope he actually plays like shit, though, against the Dolphins, because I like the Dolphins. But, yeah, Jakobi Meyers. Number 29, we got Allen Lazard, the Lazard King of the Packers, going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Wide receiver 39 last week with 11 targets. If Watson misses, I'm moving him up because this game screams and reeks of points. I love this game. I just don't love Allen Lazard if Watson plays. At number 30, we got Adam Thielen. He's been getting targeted. Hasn't really been amazing this season. But over the last 5 games, he's kind of caught a bit more fire. 96 at wide receiver last week. Not good. But wide receiver 28, 11, 67, 13 recently. You know what Adam Thielen is. Lunch pail guy. First guy in, last guy out. Gritty. Catch the ball. Do all the right things. Adam Thielen. Against the Packers, great matchup. But last week's dud kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. Again, today's video is being brought to you guys by DraftKings Sportsbook. Make sure you guys check them out. Link in the video description down below. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.